Raw selvage denim jeans and raw denim goods in general have a deep-rooted history in American and Japanese workwear and culture, in American and Japanese style, and there have definitely been some ups and there's definitely been a lot of lows. And the American denim jean as we know it has changed over time and eventually was perfected by the Japanese raw denim and selvage denim culture out there that is so infatuated with style as well as garments that just age well over time, and that passion coupled with the artisanal craftsmanship and the perfectionist mentality of the Japanese artisans, they were eventually able to elevate the denim jean into a luxury item. There's no question that the Japanese took over and dominated the raw selvage denim scene. I mean, their craftsmanship, their perfect eye, the way that they cut, the way that they make and manufacture fabric. I mean, everything that they've got over there, everything that they're doing, these incredible Japanese selvage denim brands are manufacturing some of the best denim jeans that we've ever seen in history. But with that being said, there are a couple of brands that are dedicated to the reproduction of vintage Levi denim jeans from different eras throughout American culture, a lot of which actually inspired the raw denim craze back in the 80s and 90s. And these brands faithfully recreate pieces that mirror some of the archival jeans that they have that date back from the 50s, the 40s, the 30s. Even TCB was able to get their hands on an 1890s pair of 501s. I mean, the access to archival pieces in Japan is just so vast, and a lot of brands were inspired to make their own reproduction of the Levi's 501. And today I want to talk about one of these jeans in specific, which happened to be the Sugarcane 1943 waist overall World War II model. And this is a really interesting model of raw denim jeans that I just got my hands on because they basically mirror exactly how jeans were made in the early 1940s in the thick of World War II, when America was undergoing strict rationing and conservation of resources. And they were also employing help from everywhere, whether the employees and the workers were skilled or not. And a lot of this conservation and lack of training was evoked onto a lot of products that were available during that time, and one of which happens to be Levi's jeans. So basically with the Sugarcane World War II model, these jeans come with a pocket flasher that literally looks almost exactly like how it did when you first bought a pair of Levi's jeans in the 1940s. The colors, the shape, the text, everything looks pretty much the same other than the information that's on it that's meant to convey that this is a Sugarcane reproduction piece. And I mean, it's incredible to be able to do something like that to make you feel like you're actually buying a 1940s style Levi's jean. I mean, everything from the tag to the look of the denim to the color, the weight, the feel, to the style, to the way that it looks, the way that it's cut. This jean feels significantly different from everything else in Sugarcane's collection because it is true and faithful to the 1940s Levi's 501 that was purchased by average everyday consumers and kind of simulates that experience very well. Now, what's really interesting about these jeans, which makes them a collectible model that Sugarcane has released in a limited size run, is that these jeans are literally made to mirror all of the details and nuances that were seen on the early 1940s models, such as the inconsistencies in sewing, such as the lack of cut threads. So you get a lot of these threads kind of hanging out everywhere. Most notably, the removal of the rivets on the sides of the coin pocket, which is one of the hallmarks of the 1940s jeans. And this was actually due to the conservation of iron for the military. So not only did they remove the rivets on the coin pocket, but they also stopped coating the hidden back pocket rivets. So they didn't cover them in that kind of brass, kind of copper colorway. They just left them the regular iron color. And also they stopped manufacturing branded buttons and they started using these donut hole buttons that were frequently associated with military goods at that time. And it gives it this kind of utilitarian, militaristic kind of look. And these are unbranded. They're also not covered with, again, that copper kind of finish that we talked about. I mean, even the top button is not even branded. It's maybe embellished a little bit, but other than that, it's just a standard donut hole button that was seen on a lot of military goods at that time. But going back to the coin pocket, even though there's no rivets on this jean, there is a selvedge ID coin pocket. Now, I don't think this was traditional. I don't think they went out of their way to do this. From what I understand, jeans would sometimes have this random placement because they wanted to conserve waste and they wanted to use up everything that they had, especially because of the cotton shortage. So from what I understand, some jeans would have something like this and other jeans wouldn't. But Sugarcane went ahead and did this for every one of their jeans that they released. You also see the inconsistency in stitching on the coin pocket. You see the lack of the cut threads, even on the side right next to the coin pocket. You could even see the frequent shifts in tension in the stitching, which again was due to the fact that Levi's manufacturers had to hire unskilled work because everybody basically had to put in something when it came to contributing to the country. And this was just another one of those details that is so impressive that I can't believe Sugarcane even did on these. You also see that inconsistency in sewing on the inside inside of the fly, you could see that there's almost no threads cut. I mean, the sewing is so incredibly rough. It gives it almost this kind of homemade kind of feel to a degree. And I mean, the way that I see it, it's literally harder for sugarcane to do something bad on purpose than it takes to make something good, because they're such a well-oiled machine. So for them to be able to do something like this is absolutely impressive. You could even see on the waistband that the chain stitch runoff was not cut, and you could decide to cut this off if you want. I wouldn't, but I just love the way that this looks, especially when you're wearing a shirt like tucked in and it droops down kind of. So I just think that's a really cool look, to be honest with you. You actually get the chain stitch runoff on both sides of the bottom of the waistband, and if you take a look at the top of the waistband, you could actually see the inconsistency in the tension as well. You'll also notice that on the inside they used a flannel fabric as opposed to a poly or a white cotton broadcloth, but basically this is because they had to use different types of scrap fabric due to the cotton conservation that was in effect during World War II. So they literally just used whatever scrap that they had, whether it matched or they didn't. Sugarcane decided to make it match, but from what I understand, back in the 1940s, these pockets didn't always match. They just used whatever they had. I also noticed that these pockets are very big and very wide, and the front belt loops are actually very close together to the fly. Now, I don't know if this was just a 1940s raw denim thing, or I don't know if this is just the style of cut that they had, but it was just something that I thought was interesting and that I noticed. These jeans do not have tucked in belt loops, which is to be expected from Levi's from that time period, because they were not tucking in their belt loops at that time. But these jeans do have a raised belt loop, which I don't think is traditional from what I understand. If it is, definitely let me know in the comments, but I like the roped belt loop because it's definitely going to fade beautifully over time. Taking a look at the back panel too, you could actually see that one of the hallmarks of the 1940s World War II jeans is that the back panels very rarely matched up due to the lack of skill from the cutters, due to the lack of skill from the sewers. And basically, from what I understand, this would have never been passed through inspection and would have either been rejected or sent back to be redone. So Sugarcane went ahead and decided to mirror that kind of inconsistency in the jean, which is something that I find really interesting. I mean, you could really see how much bigger the left yoke is as opposed to the right yoke. And another thing that you could see, which was also very prevalent in the early 1940s jeans, is the inconsistency in the sewing of the back pockets, where you really need to have a kind of trained eye and a trained hand. You could see on the right pocket, on the right side of it, that there's a lot more of a wobbling when it comes to the shape of the pocket. It's really not cleanly done at all, as opposed to the left side, where you could see that it's even worse at the top left. I mean, both of these pockets have very different shapes when it comes to the stitching, and that was another thing that was so prevalent in the World War II era, again because they literally just picked up whoever they could to help contribute to making jeans for military personnel, for average everyday consumers, and this is just what ended up happening. And another one of my favorite details when it comes to the 1940s style jeans is that oftentimes, due to the lack of knowledge when it came to the sewers, is that a lot of times they wouldn't even open up the selvage seam, they would actually sew it down. So it would create this kind of very weird kind of selvage ID placement because it was actually folded over. And then sometimes on the same jean, you would have one that is open. So you had two different types of looks. And you also have this really poorly done chain stitch because it's gone over so many times and the threads aren't even cut. Now, me, myself, again, I love that detail, so I don't cut the threads. You can if you want to, but I just think that it adds a little bit of visual interest for me personally. And I also love wearing these with a very high cuff to kind of accentuate and bring attention to the fact that this is a jean that was manufactured the way that they were back in the 1940s. With that being said though, the chain stitch is very thick, it is very sturdy, and I don't think that Sugarcane went ahead and sacrificed durability, but more so was more aesthetic purposes that they wanted to recreate when it came to this jean. Now, this is an overlocked inseam, but from what I understand, I don't think this was actually traditional. I think what they actually did was they left it open and a lot of the edges were frayed. I don't think they actually went and overlocked the inseam, but if they did, definitely let me know in the comments. But from what I heard, they actually used to leave this inseam open most of the time. It was very raw, it was very rugged, but again, Sugarcane did not want to sacrifice quality. They just wanted to reproduce the aesthetic details of jeans from the 1940s. I mean, everything about these jeans basically mirrors the 1940s early models of the Levi's 501s. Even the patch on the back looks almost identical to the Levi's patch. San Francisco, California, overalls and shirts. I mean, all they did was change Levi's to Sugarcane. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, everything all the way down to the fit is almost exactly the same. These jeans feature a really full straight cut. They're not exactly super wide, but they are very, very straight, which is something that's synonymous with the iconic 501 cut. And I think it's probably the perfect straight cut for me. me. It's not too wide, it's not too slim, it's not too baggy in the seat. It cups very nicely and the fabric is very stiff and sturdy. It's also an unsanforized one wash, so it has these little hairs and also this little gradation in blue that I absolutely love. And it just gives this jean a really nice look. I mean, all in all, this is a really interesting piece of history, and it's also got a very interesting story behind it and what Levi's were like during the 1940s, how they came about, why they looked the way that they did, why they were so different from every other model of 501. And I'm honestly really proud to have a piece like this in my wardrobe, and I'm definitely gonna wear these a lot. I'm gonna treat them just like a regular pair of jeans. I'm gonna wear them in, I'm gonna fade them, I'm gonna wash them, and I'm definitely gonna do a small little series on this as I start to wear it more often, so definitely stay tuned. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this little history lesson on what 1940s 501s and World War II style jeans were like, because it really was an interesting time in history, and this really is an interesting jean. But yeah, guys, anyways, with that being said, if there was any historical inaccuracies or anything that you guys wanted to add when it comes to the 1940s jeans, definitely make sure to drop it down in the comments. I really love doing this kind of deep dive on the history of denim, and if you guys want to see more of an in-depth explanation on Levi's vintage denim, definitely make sure to go check out one of my personal favorite channels, which is Den and Denim. I absolutely love his channel. He is so encyclopedic when it comes to Levi's jeans. Check out his channel, you will not be disappointed. And with that being said, thank you guys again, and I'll see you next week.